Welcome to People Love Process. In this movie, I'm going back to a thumbnail drawing I doodled out a little over 3.5 years ago. I showed this thumbnail in a previous movie that I recorded a little over a year ago, and that was like a mushroom character walking around. And I had shown this sketch in that movie, but I ultimately built out the mushroom character. So I'm finally getting around to fleshing out this character, and that's what will be the content in this movie. So, why am I showing you a 3D rendering of a human stomach? Well, that's because the character I'm going to be creating is based off of that theme, a stomach. But I'm not going to get medical illustration accurate here. I'm taking a lot of creative liberty with this. And I originally looked for a photo of a real stomach, and that was kind of gross. So I decided to go with the 3D rendered one to put forward that idea instead of getting that kind of technical with it. So, but that said, we won't be doing a realistically rendered organ. I'll be taking a lot of creative liberty with this character design. We have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get this thing kick-started. It all starts with drawing. Now, I've been having some communication with people in the comments on my YouTube channel about drawing. Somebody even commented about when I showed a sketch I'd drawn out and posted on social and shared it on YouTube. Through their social media thing for when you have a YouTube channel. And I got some feedback saying, well, we'd really like to see your drawing process. So I just wanted to say this in this video that I am planning on doing that. And I originally thought I was going to use an old SLR I had, and I just did not like the quality. The lighting was a pain in the butt. And if I'm going to do it, I just want to make sure it's not hostage quality video, basically. So I found a product, I think it's called Canvas or something like that. It's like a lamp that has a nice mount for your phone, and you can get HD video, and it has a ring light on it. So that's probably how I'll do it. That said, when I show the drawing process, I can take hours working out a sketch. On what I'm going to show you here from this thumbnail you see right here, this pre-existed, and it was actually a lot smaller than what it's showing here. This just so it's not tiny in the video. From taking that and working out a rough like I'm going to show you and the refined sketch, I'd say that whole process took about maybe 2 hours, because I'll try drawing different things different ways, or I'll draw it and it just doesn't feel right, and so I'll erase it and I'll redraw it again. And that doesn't make for a very entertaining video, but I could get around some of that by just time-lapsing, where I have to speed up the process because there's really no value in just doing it at 1-to-1 ratio speed. And that just means a lot of more work in post-production, which I'm not the best video editor, although I've gotten quite a bit better than I was before I started this channel. So anyway, I'm working on that, so we will get there. I will show some video content like that. But what I tell you in the video is, like this video, for example, is true. This is my thumbnail sketch. Did this 3.5 years ago. And then I knew I couldn't build from this. You're making too much guesswork. You'd be spending so much time. And I find that's where a lot of people get frustrated with vector building, is because they don't work out their shapes. That's all what it comes down to, is you're not drawing in Illustrator unless you have a Wacom Cintiq or a Xenolab tablet, where you could use pressure sensitivity and with a calligraphic brush in Illustrator, draw with it, although very rarely does anybody do that. That's like a very minor amount of usually just pure blood illustrators doing that. But Illustrator's not a drawing program, even though it's called Illustrator, which is kind of ironic. It's a building program, a vector building program. So you need to think in shapes and you need to draw in shapes. And that's what I really focus on. So I couldn't build from this. I wouldn't even want to try. I'd spend more time guessing than actually creating. And that's the point I'm trying to make. So I spend time doing some rough drawing, figuring specific things out, like what exactly is going to be the shape of his body, and figuring out, okay, I'm going to have an arm coming out the back, the front, and it's guided from the essence of the idea I captured in the thumbnail stage. But now I'm experimenting a little bit as I'm drawing. Once I drew these hands, I go, maybe I should draw hands without gloves, like this. And ultimately decided to get rid of that. But this was a little too, I don't know, I didn't like this one, so I redrew it again over here, so it's a little cleaner. This one's a little better. This one, I don't even like the thumb like this, so I'll probably tuck that behind the finger is what I'm thinking at this stage. And then on the, I'm just going to call it top tube and bottom tube. I'm not going to use medical terms for that. I drew this, and he's leaking some kind of, I don't know, some kind of fluid. And I thought these shapes needed to be defined better, so I redrew it over here and kind of drew the same one this way, but knowing I'm going to handle it kind of like that. And then I decided, well, if he's dripping fluid, he should have like a little puddle. So I drew a little puddle down there. And I was planning on putting a baseball cap backwards on it. Growing up, I did that all the time with the sports caps, baseball caps I wore. But then years ago, I used to work for a company called Sun Sportswear. And there's about 25 designers in the art department. It was one of the first jobs I got after art school. And I was able to get like 8 other students I went to art school with jobs there. And so we, for like about a 4-year period, we all worked together. It was really fun, made some really good friendships there, still friends with most of them all these years later. And we did sportswear for lines for Kmart, Target, Nordstrom's, Walmart, you name it. And it just went around the country. Like one of the big lines was one of their characters when the artist came up with called Rude Dog. And I think it was in Target that was really kind of popular. But why am I saying that? Well, because every year they would take our whole art department to the Magic Conference, which is used to stand for Men's Apparel Guild in California, and then they moved it to LA, but they still called it Magic. So had nothing to do with magic, had to do with imprinted garments, think silk screening, overall printing, that kind of thing. And when I was there, I was at a booth and they had all these really cool hats, and they had a hat that's kind of like this, the Jughead hat. So I thought, well, you don't see those anymore. Like I've yet to see anybody wearing one of these, but maybe that'd look kind of cool on this character. So I drew it because all of this I'm drawing out on Nina translucent stock paper. And so I'll drag it over, and I decided, okay, I kind of like it, but most people won't have a clue what kind of hat that is. I think it's kind of outdated nowadays, even though I still have the one that I got all these years later. It's actually on my bookshelf. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and blow up the rough. So this is it all composed together. I take those separate pieces, bring them into Photoshop. You can see I moved this arm further away from the body over here, and move this one over a little more, put this in here. But everything else with the type is composed. So this is where I need to redraw this once again to define the shapes better. This is better than my thumbnail, but not quite there yet. And this is where a lot of artists struggle, I think, because they stop at this point and then they start building and they wonder why it's so difficult, because they're not making it easy for them. So I would take this like this. I would go to scale, usually blow it up about 150 so it fits on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And then on top of this, I would drop my Nina Vellum stock. I have a light pad, so usually I might turn it on, but then I have a dimmer switch on it so I can control that. And so it will look something like this, and I start drawing it more precisely, meaning really figuring out these shapes. And as I'm doing that, I'm looking at these tubes, the bottom tube, the top tube, and I know, even though I'm not drawing it perfect as an elliptical shape, I know I can build all this whole top part with elliptical shapes and this bottom part with elliptical shapes. So I'm thinking in shapes as I'm drawing them, and including the little splash down here. Now I repositioned that and I brought it up here, but I think I'm going to have to adjust that at some point at this point anyway. So that's how I'll do a thumbnail, and then I'll do a rough to work it out, and I'll experiment, try different things, and then if ultimately I get it to a point that I like it, then I blow it up a little bigger, and then I draw it out because it's easier to draw bigger than smaller to capture the form and shape. And this would be what my refined drawing is. Now, I don't need to show everything. Usually when I take a refined drawing that I scanned in with my flatbed scanner, I bring it into Photoshop and I separate elements like the type on its own layer and turn it off. This is just a TIFF image, so I'm not doing that here, but in my build files in my studio, I usually do that so I can just turn off the type until I need it. Then I'll turn that on, and then I'll work out the type, so on and so forth. So we're going to take this. I always diminish it by going to transparency, and usually I set it to about 20% like this. And we'll go ahead and lock that layer. And the easiest of all shapes, and you guys should know this by now if you've watched any of my movies on my channel, is that the easiest of all shapes are, well, there's two easy shapes you can build: elliptical shapes and rectangular shapes or squares. And that's all these are. So I established this one first, which is the drop shadow for the whole character. And when I did that, I realized, that makes this like kind of pool of the fluid coming out of his bottom tube look out of perspective. And so I knew it needed to be flattened more. And so I adjusted that and dropped in these. But these are easy shapes because I can take these and just unite them. I can take all these shapes like here, take this shape, make a clone, Command-C, Command-F, select this, intersect, and now I have the reflected liquid. Of course, his eyes, those are all elliptical shapes. There's other things on here that I'll do as elliptical shapes, and that's what I want to go over in just a little bit. The next part I build was just the base of his body. So if I turn on these two shapes, let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit on this. You can see all these are just following my drawing. And even though I'm going to have a hat here, I build it as if the hat's not there. And then I can edit that. That way it flows correctly. Sometimes people would stop like right here and then build this piece over here. And at times, if you don't do it this way first, it might not visually look as good because it wouldn't actually match up that way. This way prevents that, so that's why I do that. So we're going to do some more elliptical building using simple shapes. So we're going to go down to the bottom tube here. I'll zoom in. I keep saying bottom tube because just think stomach. This is the bottom. I don't know what they even call it in medical terms. I never look that kind of stuff up anyway. It's like when I was looking up a stomach, it was so gross. I like, okay, don't Google what does a human stomach look like. That's kind of gross. Okay, so these are all elliptical shapes, and you can see I just created an elliptical shape and just sized it, rotated it, put it into position to align once again with my drawing. Is my drawing perfect? No, but the elliptical shapes are. Then to create the inner shapes, just more elliptical shapes. These ones, the blue ones, this will be the inner one here. This one here, notice my drawing kind of curves in. Well, this is where I'll just go to this elliptical shape, grab this anchor point, And I'm just going to pull it in like this. And then I'm going to go and grab my anchor point tool, and I'll grab this Bézier, and then I'll just adjust it to where I think it looks good according to my drawing. And if you don't think you got this in the right position, you can move it around. By the way, I usually have Smart Guides turned on Command U. So when I'm over an anchor point, you can see it's not showing me that I'm over an anchor point. So if I go Command U and hover, it'll say you're over an anchor point, you're over a path. This is what you usually want to have on. But as soon as you get close to a path, it'll want to snap to it. So as you're building and you're doing shape building, you'll toggle Command U on and off as you work. Sometimes it'll help you, sometimes it'll want to snap to something and you don't want it to do that. So this is all I'm going to do is I'm going to just adjust this, and notice how when I get too close it wants to snap like that. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to move it here, and we'll just adjust this curve a little bit, and it's okay to go over here and adjust it. We did most of the work with that one Bézier handle. And so this is all I'm doing is adjusting this one. Now, all I need to do is start taking the blue elements here. So I'll take the blue elliptical shapes like on this one, and we'll just use Pathfinder to minus front to cut out of that one. And we're going to go here. We'll go to this one, and I'll go minus front. So that's how that comes out. And you'll notice we have an extra anchor point here. This is why I love using plugins, because Adobe Illustrator Smart Remove is one, slow, unintuitive to remember. That's why I never use it. And it's not precise all the time. It will change your path. Here, I don't want this to change. I just want to remove this one because eventually I'll go in and I'll round these just so they don't come to a dagger sharp point. And so I can just go to subscribe, or I'm sorry, it's part of Vector Scribe plugin by Astute Graphics, and they have this panel, and this is the Smart Remove. So I can just click it, and boom, it removes it, and it doesn't destroy my path, the angle and the geometry of my path, and that's why I prefer it over using the other ones. So we're going to keep building here. I'm going to take this one, I'm going to make a copy of it. Command C, Command F. I'll take this elliptical shape. I'll minus front. Now I'll take the pen tool and I'll just build a throwaway shape just to edit this one, kind of like that. Then I'll select the shape we created and I'll cut it off because we just want this part coming out of here. Then I'll take this one, make a copy of this one, select that, minus front, and again. And you saw how I made the throwaway shape to trim this. If you didn't want to do that, you could even just create an elliptical shape like this. Just position it where you want, right about there. Select that and trim it, because all you're doing is just trimming it so this falls into this shape next to it. So that's all we're going to be doing. And I'm going to go ahead and take this one. I'll bring it to the front, select this. We've just created a giant donut of sorts, and we'll create a throwaway shape to edit it. So I'll go down here like this, and I'll just create a shape, something like that. Select this and go minus front. So we've created most of this. We'll get back up here now. So I'll go back to the pen tool, and this is where Smart Guides comes on. I'll click here, I'll go so it snaps to where this anchor is, like that. And then we'll go to where it snaps here. And this is probably where, let's do this, because I'm not zoomed in. Normally I'd zoom in like this. So go here, we'll redo that. We'll find where this snaps, and then we want it to go right about here because we're trimming off this part of this shape. Let's zoom out now. So with that on top, I'll select this C type shape and I'll minus front. So we have it going into the stomach now the way we want. And then we used elliptical shapes to create these. So I'm just going to select both of those, unite them. We'll select both of these copies we made of these elliptical shapes, and I'll fuse those together. And then we want to make sure it's on the same layer. So we'll put it down here. Go like that. Select the green, and we can go minus front. And so all we have to do now, let's zoom out a little bit, is edit this. So we'll edit this by, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to zoom in just on this section, because what I want to do is, I probably should have saved a copy of the top shape now that I'm thinking about it, but it's no big deal. I'll just make a copy of this shape, select this, minus front. Then I'll take these. Then I'll trim that. So you do have to do some craftsmanship. Now I don't want to fuse these with this path over this, just to add more anchor points here. So this is where I'm focusing on editing it just like that. And we'll go like that. You know, this, you can reposition it like here. Then we'll edit the other shape. This is, because we edited it already, it's a group. So I'm just going to go and ungroup that all together and just select this part. And then I'll snap this here. And this will be the shape to edit that one. Like that. So we're building in pieces. That's always easier to build your artwork in pieces. And now the last part, we can just use elliptical shape to trim this part. Intersect it. And now we have all the shapes that are going to make this up. We'll go ahead and just match the same outline we have on these. So if I select all these shapes here, eventually, I'm not going to do this with everything, but if I took all these shapes and unite them, then that's how they would work and associate with the stomach shape. So all built off elliptical shapes. Now that same principle is the exact same way I built the top tube. Here's all the elliptical shapes, so the same methodology I used on that, and ultimately all the final top tube shapes ends up looking like this, and of course these would all become united at some point. Now the other elements on the face, let's turn on the face and mouth shapes here, and I'm going to zoom in on this. So this is a pretty S-curve, so it all comes down to tangents. This here is going to have 6 anchor points. So if I just highlight these two, so here's 3 here and 3 on this side, but these are on tangents. So you can see that these 4 that are selected are all on tangents, and they have the straight Bézier curves pulled out. And then the only ones, and these are smooth anchor points. There's only 2 types of anchor points in Illustrator, smooth and corner. These are smooth. These are corner at the end. And these corners flow into those curves nicely because of the Bézier curves coming out of the handles. So even though you build in shapes and you can use simple shapes like elliptical shapes and rectangular shapes, those are the easy ones. This is ones that are a little tricky, but the more you perfect your ability with the pen tool and controlling your Bézier curves, the easier they get. Now on shapes like this, these are a little easier because you could actually create this using 2 elliptical shapes. You could do this, you could do another shape, maybe it's a little bigger, and you could position it wherever you want it. Let's say it's here. Make sure this one's on top. Go like this, minus front, and now you have a shape like that. Maybe you would chop off a part like this. So it all comes down to thinking in shapes, building in shapes to get the shape you need. And if you think in shapes, it makes it easier to discern how to solve something. And as you're drawing it out, I'm always thinking in the shapes I'm going to build. I think about how will I build this, and that'll inform me on how I should draw it to help guide my building efforts. So if we go to this one's just a simply five anchor points. We didn't need an anchor point here because the curve isn't as severe. This is a large, almost like 3/4 of a full circle curve. That takes more anchor points to control it accurately, whereas this one is a very shallow curve, so that can be created with the Bézier handles that just come out of this anchor point, as this one shows, to create that. So it's a balance of having enough to be accurate without having too many to make it convoluted, because you can have too many and it's just a pain to control anything that way. And building in shapes is the way you want to go. Like on the mouth, this is the shape for the outer part of the outline of the mouth. Here's the inner part of the outline. This only has 3 anchors on it. So everything else is being controlled by these Bézier handles. And then these are what's going to create the gaps. Why would I want to build each of these teeth shapes separately? It makes more sense doing it this way. And as you're going to see in a little bit, we'll come back after I build this out and we'll round them to get the shapes to match my drawing. So once again, thinking in shapes is going to play a part in it. If we scroll up here, we can see the hat shape here. Originally I built it, and then I realized, looking at the thickness of the body, I should probably make that a little more towards this thicker part, otherwise it won't look as consistent. And so I did that by offsetting this shape of the hat and coloring it blue so you could distinguish the difference. But notice on the inside, I didn't want it to get fat in here. I'm okay with that thickness on the inside, but on the exterior weight of the line, it needed to be a little thicker. So I'm always paying attention to those details as I'm building. And then we have the arms. Here on this one, I changed it where I had this thumb tucked behind it, so it's like a fist. It looks cleaner than having the thumb overlap this area. It looked a little odd. Then if we go over here, here's all the pieces for the hand. Once again, what shape do you think I used to create these fingers on the hand and the bottom part of the hand? Elliptical shapes, because it just goes faster and it's more precise. So think in shapes, build in shapes, build with pieces, because you can always take all of these pieces here, as shown here, and I can go unite, and boom, you have your artwork done. It's a lot easier to build that way than trying to build this outer whole perimeter shape and then try to build these interior shapes. So build in pieces. It just makes things go a lot faster. Here's his legs. We have those in there. And now this is where I want to establish a base black and white artwork. And all of these things, most of these aren't fused together, but that's where I'll go through and I'll fuse them like I did the hand here. But I'm not going to walk through it. That's enough for you to know what that is. I'll go ahead and turn this layer on. Let's go ahead and turn off these layers. And this is where I've fused everything together. We have a white, we have a black here. Even though Adobe didn't put the swatches on the desktop feature that I requested, instead created the swatch library, whatever. That's useful in and of itself, but for what I like to demonstrate, we'll just use my old-fashioned way. So the outline will be that. We'll take all of these shapes here, like this. I'll just color them white. I'm going to color these white, even though they will be colored like that. And, oh, by the way, I forgot. I told you I was going to show you what I meant by rounding. Let's just back up a little bit, just so I don't want to have it filled in black, because then I can't show you how I did this. So I built the teeth like this. Why did I do that? Because I don't want to create the rounds by trying to build those rounds on the fly. So it was easier to build the teeth this way, punch through those shapes. That way I can just go to the corner widget here, and we can go to like this corner here, and I can add that little round there. I can come here and I can go ahead and round this one like that. I can go here, go here. You could do it at the same time if you want, although I think they're going to have different curves, so I wouldn't do it on this one. This one, a larger round. This one, a little shallower round, like that. That looks good. Go here, go into this one, pull this one down. This one's going to be a little shallower, but rounded nonetheless. We'll round this one, kind of like that. This goes in the corner, of course, that'll have a round. And then we don't want these to come to perfect points. So this is where I'll select all these like this. And you don't want to make it too big, but I want a little round on these, something like that. So that's how I'd handle the detail in the teeth. And it looks great, and it's a lot easier in trying to build those curves on the fly when you're building those shapes. It's easier just to make the basics corner shapes after you punch through all the shapes, and then use the rounding tool, the corner widget, to pull off everything else. So let's go ahead and reestablish the black and white here. We'll just select these shapes, color it white. We'll select stomach shape, the teeth, all these little highlights. These will be, the two big ones will be white. The other ones will be more of a reflected color, reflective light, that is, like that. And then we can select the highlight, and then the little fluid. Oh, thank you, Illustrator. What? What? Hold on. Adobe Illustrator 2025 is requesting to bypass it. Why? Great. Thanks for screwing up my recording. Illustrator, it's a love-hate relationship, people. I love it when it works. I really hate it when it does crap like that. In-app warnings like that, whatever. And this one, I don't want this black. We'll make this ultimately gray, like that. So that's how, oh yeah, the stars. I originally had drawn this, which is like trumpet or something, but that doesn't make sense. That's like going backwards in his system. Well, his system. He's a personified stomach, so he doesn't really have a system. So that's the base, black and white. We can turn off our sketch now. I just wanted to show you that when I did the teeth rounding. So this is the base, black and white. Now we want to go ahead and color everything. This were tonal families. So these are the colors I came up with. I didn't want a stark black for the outline. So I came up with this kind of dark brownish pink type of color. It's dark enough to work as well as the black without being black. So we'll go ahead and color that. Obviously the stomach is going to be this nice pink. I'm going to make these stars red. And then I'm going to colorize the hat this color. And this will be the side brim like that. And on this color, we're going to make it green, even though the drip isn't on this layer. He's dripping green fluid like that. So the other thing is on these eyes, I'm going to select these reflective light source here. I'm going to go ahead and color it the same color as the outline, but we're going to go to the color palette. And because I'm using global colors, you see T, that's tint. So we're going to make this a 70% tint of that base outline color. So they're still there, but they're not as bright as the white highlight that we have on the eyes, like that. And this is where coloring and detail comes in. Now, when my artwork, I should point out, is in this stage of black and white, this is where I'll print it out and then I'll draw on top of it. And so if I turn on this, you can see I've drawn on top of my printout, and then I scan it back in and align it with my artwork because this is going to guide my next phase of vector building. So I work it out in analog because it goes faster than trying to just noodle around in Illustrator for hours. And I use this to build from. So I just wanted to show you that really quick. Let's turn on the colors again here, because when I start building it out, I'll align it once again to my artwork, and then these shapes or the drawing on this printout is going to guide my vector building efforts. So one of the first things that I work on is the tubes, building the shading on the tubes. Oh, but first, let's talk about the color we're going to be shading with. So we're going to turn on these. These are shading values. So if I select this, you can see it's 340-15-3 is the base color for that kind of light, dirty pink. And this color here, let's go ahead and lock the drawn shadings like that. Actually, this one, we can set the opacity. It doesn't need to be 100, it just needs to show up. So we'll go 40 and I'll lock that layer. So if we go back to this color, it's 340-15-3. Now what you want to do is desaturate that color and then add a little black to it. So if it's 340-15, this one is 120, half of 40, and 7, approximately half of 15. And I added 20 to it, so it makes a muddy value. Why do I do that? Because now if I go to transparency and I go to multiply blend mode, look how nice it looks. Now, if you didn't want it this dark, then all you have to do is adjust the opacity. So let's say you decide to knock the opacity down to, I don't know, let's try 80, like that. So it's now 80%. You might want to keep it stronger. It just depends what you're going for. If we go on this one, the same principle, this, if I select it, it's 25-100, and the muted value is 13, so approximately half of 25, half of 100, add black, creates a muted value, but when you set it to multiply, you get this really nice, rich kind of shading. And so it works over whether it's a lighter color or a darker kind of orangish color. It's going to work well over that. So that's why I did that. And then this one is how I'm going to use it to create a shading for the green value as well. So let's talk about why I save shapes. If I go up here, you see my X layer. As I'm building this, I'm saving shapes in there if I ever want to go back. And down here, if I turn on this Save Shapes, these are all the internal elliptical shapes that I use to create these. And I turn these on just to show you, so I can walk you through how I would build this detail in my drawing. So you can see I have an inset kind of shape. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to go to Object, I'm going to go to Path, I'm going to go to Offset Path. We're going to go to -2. I'm working in points here. We can preview it. That's what I want. So I inset it too. Once I've inset it, I'll make a copy, Command-C, Command-F. If you have your contextual menu bar open, you can just hit duplicate. I don't keep that open because it just gets in my way. I don't like it. But you might like it. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you you can't use it. If it works for you, then that's the way software should work. You decide what works best for you, not what I think you should use. That's not the way it works. So don't worry about that. If you like it and I don't, no big deal. I'm going to copy this one, select this one, make sure it's on top, select this one, go minus front so you can see how that trimmed. And then I'm going to go ahead and lop off this bottom part because we don't need that. And I'll trim that off like that. And now, why did I keep this one in here? Because I'm going to use this to help us register and create this little detail here. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this. We'll zoom in more so you can see it. I'm going to go ahead and select this color of the stomach, and this is why I locked the drawing layer. Otherwise, you can't do this. It'll keep wanting to select the drawing. I'm going to make a copy of it. And Command-C, Command-F. I just hit the F3 key, by the way. It's a keyboard shortcut I created years ago. I've been using it for years. And with that highlighted, I'll select this, and I'm going to go intersect because it will trim it the way it wants. And the topmost shape will take dominance, so it will just remain on this layer. Now that I've trimmed that, it's as if it'll be when I compose its final form. Then I'll come over here, and I'm just going to create another elliptical shape like this. I might rotate it just to get a nice angle, kind of like this. Highlight where the anchor point is. This is where you want to have smart guides on Command-U. I might have over-rotated that, so let's go ahead and set the orientation and rotate there and just move it, kind of like that. Then I'll take this, clone it, Command-C, Command-F. From this anchor point, I'll hold Shift. That way it stays in the middle, kind of like this. And that will be the highlight I'm going to use. So I can delete this shape now. I can delete this shape now. Just for the sake of it, I'm going to turn off my shading now. I'm going to go ahead and select this shape. Let's zoom out so we can have access to our colors. I'll sample the shading color. Then I'm going to take the highlight color, which is white. And all of these colors here, I'll sample the stomach color. Then I'll go up to the color palette, and this is going to be a tint. We'll make this 60% pink. And that's how I created the detailing on this. So I just wanted to walk you through that because it's not hard, but obviously there's other details I would do on this where on all these shapes I would go in here and you could just add a nice little subtle round like that so it looks better than just coming to a dagger sharp point. But that's how I handled all that detail. And I just wanted to walk you through that because it's not hard. It's just a little different. You have to think a little different. So let's turn this off. Obviously, this is all my drawing. Here's all the building of all those shapes to create all the detail in the artwork. And this is what the final shading looks like here. And I would just take this and apply that shading color value like that. Again, this is, what did we do? 80, like this. If you thought it looked good originally at 100, like that, it could be 100 too. So if we go over here, we could apply 100 to it. Just depends on what you want to do, but you can see how the shading value on the hat plays into that part, how we took the blue and those are just making the shadows on the glove, on the teeth. You can see the drip coming out of his stomach, plopping on the ground. And now this is where all the highlights come in. If I turn on the highlights here, you can see we have the hot spots, which are white, but then we have the subdued highlights, like on the bottom tube, which are 60%. So we'll go ahead and match that on the top. So I'll select this. Again, we'll go to 60 using the color panel to set that tint, and those are all the highlights shown there. We have this nice rim of color here, but I don't want it full white. So on this one, we'll go ahead and set this one to about 60%. And you might be saying, well, what's the difference between 60% white and 60% tint? Well, you can see the white one's going to appear just a little brighter. So I wanted that to be a rim light coming like it's coming from the side. And then the hot spot is the hottest point of the light hitting the surface. And obviously this isn't photorealistic, but it's playing off of those principles of your light source and keeping them all consistent. It'll mean for a better composition overall. Now, this little guy probably has some angst to him, so I felt he was a little too smooth and perfect, so maybe he's a disgruntled little teenager, so he needs some blemishes, so I put blemishes on him like this. And now this comes to the point where I wanted to create the typography, so if I turn this on, This is where I decided to build this out again in shapes. But the more I was thinking out after I built this out and I was getting ready to color it, I'm going, you know what? We have some dead space here. I think I'm going to adjust this O. So on the final, that's what I did. I filled in that space. So let's go ahead and just select this type. We'll copy it, select the outline of the character, Command B to paste behind. And that's how the final design from my thumbnail sketch all the way to this came out. Originally, I thought maybe I should make it a speaking bubble like this. But then when I did that, it's a little too comical. He's already comical enough. And I like the gutted out being bigger and more prominent in the messaging. So this was a lot of fun. But then since I had this character, I decided I need to do something else with it. And so I decided to create this next design I'll show you, which is a badge design where I just took, he's not leaking anymore. He kind of cleaned that up, but I played off of more puns. I love puns. So trust your gut instinct. Don't let fear gut your dreams. So I think this badge will make for a fun sticker design. And anyways, thank you for watching this gut-wrenching creative process. I hope you could stomach the final character art. If by any chance I gave you creative indigestion, I apologize. Okay, enough puns. I just had to work in a few more puns. Remember, the exercise files for each of my People of Process movies can always be accessed via a link in the description below this movie. If you choose to access them, I thank you a lot because that level of support does help me quite a bit. Thank you again to those who have become members of this channel. Of course, your monthly support helps me to create original content like this movie. Until next time, thank you for watching People of Process. And as always, I hope this content helps you improve your own creative process.